listening to the Patriot Nation Podcast.
All right, welcome into another edition of the Patriot Nation Podcast. As always, a proud member of the CLNS group of podcasts. Make sure you download and subscribe to all those great shows to get great Patriots content all week long. Tonight, we have a special edition, a Super Bowl recap edition, and unfortunately, it is not a good one. It is not a good one. The Patriots get absolutely worked, embarrassed, and pantsed by the Seattle Seahawks. Use all of the euphemisms and terms you want to use. None of it will be enough to explain how bad the Patriots got beat by the Seahawks in this one. And it was ugly pretty much from the start.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, I thought the first couple possessions, there were some opportunities for the Patriots, and then things get away from you. And this is, I think by the second or third possession, it was pretty clear the Patriots' offensive line was not up to the task. They had more in the running game than I expected, but the pass blocking was not where it needed to be. And a couple opportunities for turnovers early. You don't capitalize on it. And then by the time you get to the second half, I think we talked about in the preview, the Seattle team has the ability to kind of create an avalanche of points against you and wear you down and then score a whole lot all at once. And we saw that happen near the end of this game. You know, the Patriots finally started to put something together to look respectable and, you know, put themselves in position to be in position.
Yeah.
And that's when, you know, Seattle really put a couple of nails in the coffin down the stretch. So I know we're going to get into the Patriots part of this. I think we do just have to tip our cap here to Seattle a little bit. I think that's according to DVOA, it's a historically great group, and they played like it tonight.
Yeah. They were all over the field. They were great in coverage. They were great rushing the passer. It was a bad night. And listen, as bad as the Patriots were, and they were bad offensively, and there was not, I honestly have zero nice things to say about anyone on the offense tonight. Zero, not one. I have not one good thing to say about one player on the Patriots offense tonight. However, that doesn't and shouldn't take away from how good that Seahawks defense really is. Now, I will also say, this is the same Seahawks defense that the Rams put up a ton of points and yards against, right? Is that just because Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams are that good? Maybe. I don't know, right? But, you know, that seems like something that's interesting. Obviously, the Patriots' offensive line was horrendous tonight. But, you know, feels like, I don't know. The Patriots were overmatched from Jump Street, and it never got close. And I thought McDaniels was fine, but he didn't, like, you weren't the better team. You weren't close to the better team. And so you had to take some chances because you weren't the better team. And you had to do some things because if both teams played a good game, you were going to lose. And so I didn't necessarily agree with some of the decisions and some of the calls, but I guess here we are. So,
yeah, and I think, you know, you make the Rams comparison. Rams have two Hall of Fame receivers and one of the best rushing attacks in the NFL. They are multidimensional in a way this Patriots offense has not been all season. I think back, like, we saw the running game put things together down the stretch this year, and we were trying to figure out, all right, did they find something, or are they just playing bad teams? And I think it's pretty clear that they were just playing bad teams. That's where we landed on that. You don't need to be better all around. I think this loss was a talent issue in a lot of ways. I also think it's I don't know if I would say a coaching issue. So I don't think the Patriots are a poorly coached team. They won coach of the year and assistant coach of the year. I thought Seattle was the better coached team tonight. And that means, this is the evolution of the sport. you can be the second best. Like that's the Patriots were the second best this year, and that's great. The goal is to be number one. So what do you do in the offseason to improve that? I think there's one example of this I'll use. The final nail in the coffin there, the Uchenna Nwosu, I think it went down as a pick six, they said.
It did, yeah.
That play, the Patriots are going no huddle. When you go no huddle, one of the benefits of going no huddle is that the defense has to do simple things because you're putting them back on their heels and you're forcing them to communicate quickly and all that. Patriots do that. Seattle comes with an overload blitz off of a no huddle situation. You don't see that. And it was perfectly timed, perfectly coordinated. And, they brought, I think, 4 or 5 guys off the right side of the offense, left side of the defense. One more than the Patriots had blockers over there. And you get in the spot where it's like, all right, Witherspoon's coming like a heat-seeking missile with no one in his way. You keeping guys into block, so you only had 3 or 4 receivers. None of them are open yet. You can't throw the ball away because you're in the pocket. You're out of luck. Like that's not a failure of any individual player. That's not a failure of Drake May. It's not even it's not even necessarily like a failure of the coaching. It is because it relies on them, but it's not that the coaches did something poorly. It's that the other team did something better. Right. And that's the level you have to get to. I do think it's notable that this is 2 years in a row we've seen the top defense in the NFC just dominate the Super Bowl. And, we say defense wins championships. So I think we're in that era right now, as we saw the Patriots got to this point because of their defense too. And Zach, someone who I thought called a great game tonight.
Well, that's the other part of it that's challenging is that I thought the defense overall played very well. Obviously, they gave up, too many long runs to Kenneth Walker. Walker played a great game. One of our keys was stopping that run. And I thought they did a pretty good job of it for the most part all game. But he had some big runs. And, he set up the first touchdown. He set up most of those field goals with some of his runs, and it took a lot of the pressure off of Sam Darnold to be great. And defensively, I mean, listen, and you want to talk about the difference in the game. It's really simple. The difference in the game is really simple. Sam Darnold, he wasn't great, but he did what he had to do to win the game. Yeah. And here's a great example. That first drive ends in a field goal by the Seahawks. He throws an out pass to A.J. Bonner in the slot on Marcus Jones, and Marcus Jones came down flying on that pass. If that pass is 6 inches behind A.J. Bonner and not in the exact right spot, it's 7-0 Patriots.
Yep.
And instead, Sam Darnold
on the first pass of the game. That was the third play?
Yeah, it was the third play of the game. First pass of the game. It was a pick six. It was perfectly timed by Marcus Jones. He was right there, and it was a perfect throw by Sam Darnold. And that's what you need in a Super Bowl, in a game where you absolutely have to win. You have to 100% have to execute when you have those situations. And when the other team is playing at their best, you have to play even better than that. And that's what Sam Darnold did tonight at times. He wasn't great most of the night, but he didn't make any huge critical errors. And Drake May made multiple, including missing wide open play. The missed Austin Hooper was horrendous. He had Diggs coming across the middle late on a play where he ended up taking a sack.
Never saw it. Yeah,
it just there were I think multiple plays like that.
There were 3 plays where they went off the hands of receivers, and it was like a C- throw. Like the throw's not good, but it does get to the hands of the receiver, and the receiver doesn't make plays. The Henry one over the middle, the Kayshon Boutte slant, and the Pop Douglas. I don't know if it was an over route or whatever, down the left side, and it was just like
was bad.
And these are the plays the receivers have made, and it's just you're just a hair worse than the other team. And the issue in a game like this, when you're playing Seattle, is that I think you saw it the first couple of possessions. Like once you get behind schedule against that defense, it felt like game over. You were in second and long, third and long, and it felt like you were cooked. So you really couldn't afford to make any of those drops, any of those mistakes, which puts more pressure on all of these guys to execute. And, there's a reason why Seattle had the top defense this year. There's a reason why they were like the 5th best team by DVOA of all time coming into this. They make life very difficult for you on defense, and May didn't. No one on the offense, May in particular, though, played up to the level that you need to win a game like that.
Well, again, I'll say it again. I have not one good thing to say about anyone on the offense. There was not one guy that I walked away from this game feeling like, you know what, that guy played a good game, or I'm excited about the future of that guy. Obviously, we're all excited about the future of Drake May, right? But this game is a game where we're just going to pretend like it never happened because it was that bad, right? Yeah. There's two guys, Chris Gonzalez and Craig Woodson, and that's it. There's no one else, right? And so it's just, it's one of those things. Marcus Jones played fine, almost at that pick six, had a punt that he should have fielded that didn't, that ended up down at the 3-yard line. I don't know what he was doing on that one. And it just never felt like he could get anything going in the return game. And it wasn't good. It wasn't good enough from anyone on either side of the football. And I think defensively, the Patriots did well, and they were getting pressure on Sam Darnold. They just couldn't get him on the ground. And it's like, you get in the backfield, just get him on the ground. That was very frustrating.
There were a lot of plays too where they were rushing him and they were getting their hands up, and Darnold was making the throw anyway. And it's like, all right, if that's going to be how the game is going to go, then you're going to lose. If you told me beforehand, I thought the defense played well. But if you told me beforehand turnovers are going to be 3-0 in Seattle's favor, telling you we're losing this game. This is the kind of game that you win like Super Bowl 36 because you force turnovers, and it's so hard to score in the Seattle defense, as we saw, to go the length of the field against them. You want to force turnovers and score in a short field. That's the whole game right there. And you had some chances, you didn't do it. And then once you're playing from 2-3 scores down, forcing those turnovers becomes a lot harder because they're not throwing the ball as often. When they throw it, they're being more selective. When they throw it, it's play action against your base defense. The first touchdown that Seattle gets, their only offensive touchdown of the game.
Only offensive touchdown of the game.
To Barner.
Yep.
That's Jack Gibbons in coverage. Why? Because you're trying to stop the run because it's late in the game and you're trying to get the ball back and stop him from running down the clock. Jack Gibbons probably isn't on the play to blow that coverage if the game script is different and if you're playing things differently. Things get away from you a little bit, but I thought the defense played. I thought the defense played well, and also it's a weird thing because it's like the defense didn't play poorly, but it was one of those where I felt like we got an 80th percentile or a 90th percentile performance from the defense, and we needed a 95th percentile. Yeah. But if the offensive line was going to play like this, you probably didn't have it. Even if Marcus Jones pick sixes that first thing, you still might not have a chance in this game because you didn't have an offense.
Yeah, that's a fair point. By the way, the Seahawks had 17 points off of turnovers. They had the sack by May, the strip sack by May at the third quarter, and then in that touchdown that you talked about, they had a pick, the first interception, which was just one of the worst throws you'll ever see in your entire life. I just have absolutely no way. Kyle Williams is running. Just throw it into the open space. It's a touchdown. It's a touchdown if you throw it into the open space. And instead, he throws it to the defensive back who's running up the field. Instead, it was just a horrendous throw. And so that made no sense to me. That, they get a field goal out of that. And then, of course, they have the pick six, which, again, fumble, pick, it doesn't matter. Either way, they call it a pick six. So we'll call it a pick six. But, that they end up returning for the touchdown. And it just, you can't win with that. They outscored you just off of turnovers. So it's just, and it is what it is. I mean, you have to move on and deal with that, but it's frustrating. And you just feel like they were here. My biggest concern, and I'm curious to listen to some of I haven't really listened to any of the after, the press conference and stuff he had afterwards, but my biggest concern is that you play this poorly in a game of this magnitude after not really playing. Drake May really didn't play well all playoffs. He had one really nice throw against the Chargers. He had a few nice throws against Houston, and he really did all the work running the ball against the Broncos. Does that impact how you feel and approach things when you get back here? If you get back here, when you get back to the playoffs, does that impact those things? That's what concerns me. They always say those Super Bowl losers have a really tough time the next year. And so what does it look like for the Patriots next year trying to come back from a loss, especially when a loss is this bad?
Yeah. Well, it's always tough, when you're this team that loses the Super Bowl, you're always going to have a hard schedule the next year, no matter what. And to make the Super Bowl, a lot of things need to go right, and that doesn't happen every year. I mean, it's worth remembering the 0-1 Pats missed the playoffs in 0-2.
Yep.
And then won 2 more in a row.
Right.
So, if the Patriots miss the playoffs next year, I'm not going to be bugging out over here. I do think we saw Drake May needs to continue to develop. He looked young. He looked inexperienced. I think it's worth noting. He said after the game that he had to get an injection in his right arm to play. So I think there was probably more to that shoulder thing than we knew. And we talked about how his throw was looked off in the playoffs. It's entirely possible this entire thing is just his arm's not responding to things the way he wanted it to. And, he comes back healthy in September, and we're all good. That's totally possible here.
It felt like those long passes were a struggle to get them down the field. And that's not what it was all year long.
Well, he has looked uncomfortable the last couple games. A large part of that is that you are playing the 2 best defenses in the league away from home in both games. One of them in inclement weather with a unit that is clearly outgunned talent-wise. So it's going to look worse.
Right.
How much of this is the injury? How much of this is May needing to develop? How much of this is, hopefully not, but there's probably parts of this that's him butting up against whatever his ceiling is. There's a chance that this is as good as it gets for May. And I think we should be realistic. All right, if this is as good as it gets for May, and he's a guy who can be a top 10 quarterback, but he might struggle against the best defenses, all right, then what do we need to build around him to make that work?
Right.
Because Sam Darnold, Drake May was worse than Sam Darnold tonight. Drake May is a better quarterback than Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold was a Super Bowl champion because they built a behemoth around him.
Yeah.
So that is your goal now in New England. How do we recreate that? I will say, if you're looking for some optimism here, Christian Gonzalez, Craig Woodson, balled out.
Mm-hmm.
Those were the 2 best players on the field for the Patriots. And Milton Williams was he should have had 3 sacks, and Sam Darnold evaded him twice. I don't know how that happened, but he dominated and rushed the passer. Craig Woodson was fantastic, and Christian Gonzalez was electric. So you have some young pieces in that defense to turn this into something to build on next year. And Zach Core is clearly something, and we'll see what moves they make this offseason. But I feel really good about the defense. I feel great about the coaches. I feel great about May still. I'm confident that we can get back to where he has been during the season. The question then is, how do you build something around him that's more sustainable?
Right.
And I think you're going to have some hard discussions in the offseason. Stephon Diggs, $28 million cap hit next year. Both these tight ends getting older. Kayshon Boutte. I mean, one of the big plays I thought, the second half, when they have a string of 3 and outs, one of them on 3rd down, you're looking at Kayshon Boutte to win a route against Josh Jobe, and he can't do it. And that was a matchup we thought
out of bounds.
I mean, he got dominated on the route, and that was one we thought, worst case he holds his own, and it's kind of a 50-50 split. Instead, he gets completely shut down there.
Yeah.
All right. Well, is that going to change the way we feel about Kayshon Boutte when we're investing at wide receiver in the offseason?
Right. Right. And that's, really what you need. Honestly, what you need, it feels like, is a guy that can take over the game. Right. JSN is a guy that can take over the game. Kenneth Walker has turned into a guy that can take over the game. And so the Patriots have to put all of their resources into stopping those 2 guys. And still Kenneth Walker ends up as Super Bowl MVP. But because you have to invest so much into stopping those guys, then other guys are left open, right? I thought they ran, the Patriots didn't fall for it the second time, but they ran JSN out of the backfield. and they ran a screen pass to the other side and picked up 25, 30 yards, on a Kenneth Walker play. And it was a great play call by them because you see JSN in the backfield, you automatically think the ball's coming to him out of the backfield, and instead we throw it back the other direction. Now they ran it again. The Patriots were ready for it. They made a nice play on it. But like that's the type of stuff where it's like, anyways.
And the Patriots couldn't do that on their own because you don't have someone to run any of that stuff with right now. And
correct.
It feels like the Patriots have a lot of players who are a B plus.
Yeah,
and that's great. But until you run up against a team like this, that it's like A- or A level players across the board. It's
right. There's no one. There's no one on the Patriots offense that truly scares you. Trayvon Henderson's got a ton of speed. He's not a very good running back.
Yeah.
Kyle Williams has great speed. He's not a very good receiver. Like they're great athletes, but that doesn't make them great players. And maybe they can develop into that, but they're not that right now.
Well, Stephon Diggs is someone who I think clearly slowed down in the back half of the season.
Oh yeah.
Hunter Henry, I think, also slowed down in the back half of the season, and at his best, he's never been an X factor. He's always been a B plus guy. Like he's a savvy, experienced possession receiver, basically, and who's useful as a blocker. But he's not going to dominate you there. And I think that's one of the areas like where Seattle gets you. AJ Barner, he's an elite blocking tight end who is a very good athlete. So what happens is he ends up on the field because you're running the ball, and a couple times a game you're going to ask him to catch, play action plays or checkdowns. And because he's a great athlete, he can burn coverages on those play action shot plays. And if you get him on a check down, he's hard to tackle. He picked up a first down for them early, and he's not going to get the ball a lot. He's not a main part of the offense. But when you ask him to do those things, he does them. The Patriots don't really have a tight end like that. Someone who is dominant at one thing and then can be useful for the other things. They have a whole bunch of guys who are kind of well-rounded and just like B-, B level.
Yeah.
And that means that's really useful in the regular season because it makes you versatile from game to game. And it makes you hard to beat because you can do a lot of different things. And right up against a team that can do one thing or two things really, really, really well and is an A+ at them. Sometimes you're just outgunned and you don't have a response to that.
Yeah, that's true, and it's unfortunate. And obviously, you never want to be in that situation when we lose, right? But again, I think what I keep coming back to, and as we kind of talked about this off air, I'm not quite as mad as I expected I would be. I'm not quite as disappointed as I expected I would be. Listen, I'm obviously disappointed and I'm obviously upset about it. But I also understand that this was a successful season, right? This was a season, if we take a step back and we, look at the entire season, I think you have to look at it and say it was a massive success. You go from the worst team in football last year. Now, remember, the Patriots ended up with the number 4 pick, but they only got the number 4 pick because the Bills intentionally lost in the last week of the season last year. The Patriots had the number 1 pick. They had the worst record in the league, and the Bills intentionally lost. The Patriots ended with the number 4 pick because of their strength of schedule. The strength of schedule was better than the Titans' strength of schedule, and so therefore they ended up with the 4th pick instead of the 1st pick. Nevertheless, right? So they were the worst team in the league last year. Okay. Had the worst record in the league. You go from that to 17 wins and the Super Bowl, right? Now you lose in the Super Bowl and you get smoked in the Super Bowl. But from a defensive perspective, yes, you got crushed, but you were a lot closer on the defensive end than anyone really gave you credit for.
Yes.
Right? The offense couldn't do anything. And, so feels like you kind of need a full overhaul there. We need, more offensive linemen. We need more playmakers, pass catchers, running the ball, whatever the case may be. But that defense is legit. And you have some young studs. Craig Woodson, I think, is a huge story this offseason and this postseason. And the fact that if he plays like that, we're talking about a Pro Bowl / all-pro safety. And you combine that with Christian Gonzalez, and we saw what he did tonight. He's incredible. And we see what he's been doing for the last few years. So now all of a sudden that secondary becomes a lot better. And you feel a lot better about that secondary. And you feel good already about the defensive line. And so you add a few pieces here and there, and that defense is set. And then you can work on that offense that needs a ton of help.
Yeah.
So
I think it's clear this team needs to be better on the line of scrimmage on both sides right now. And that's, I think, if you're going to take a lesson away from the playoffs, the Super Bowl recent stuff, look at the recent Super Bowl winners. It's literally all like generational quarterback or generational defense. Like that is what we're looking at here. And I think May can be that quarterback, but we've also seen that quarterback is not immune to the generational defense. Mahomes getting lit up twice.
Yep.
So offensive line's a big thing. Will Campbell I thought was disappointing tonight.
Yep.
I don't think he's as bad as the hate he's getting online suggests. Thought Jared Wilson was also very bad. Like Garrett Bradbury wasn't very good. I don't really have anything to say about Michael Wendy. I thought he was okay, and then Morgan Moses was, better than some of the others, but still bad.
Not great. Strip sack comes from Morgan Moses' guy. Moses got beat a few times. I mean, listen. Here's the thing. Ultimately, this is what it comes down to, right? Don't take offense to this if you're listening to this and you're one of these people. People are stupid. People are dumb. They're just not smart, right? And that's not their fault. They're just not smart, right? And so what have they been told all season long? What were they told all draft? Right? The entire draft process, they were told Will Campbell's not long enough and he's not good enough and he's not a tackle, right? And so then he comes in and people like him. And then you say, oh, wow, Will Campbell is this great player and so on and so forth. And, no, he's actually really good. But then there starts to be pressure on the quarterback. And then it's like, well, it's all Will Campbell's fault. We don't care who actually missed the tackle. We don't care who actually missed the block. We don't care whose guy it was that had the sack. We don't care how many pressures Jared Wilson gave up or whatever. We just know that Will Campbell's on the line of scrimmage and the Patriots offensive line didn't play well. Therefore, it must be Will Campbell's fault. And it's just stupid. And unfortunately, that's what it's going to come down to. And that's the way people have decided they're going to think. And there's just nothing you can do with that. You can't control the way people think. You're going to have to just move on and say, you know what? You're helpless. And we're just going to move on. And if the Patriots decide to keep him at left tackle, which it seems like they're going to, then they do. And if they move him to left guard, then they do. And I don't know what the situation is. I think he's good enough to play left tackle. I think I saw it this year from him. Now, will he ever be a top 5 to 10 left tackle in the NFL? I don't have the answer to that question. I don't know. Right? Maybe he will be and maybe he won't be. I'm not sure. But I do know that he fits what they want to do from a team building perspective. He fits what they want to be. And if the Patriots look at it and think he'll be a good tackle, but a great guard, then fine, move him to guard. I really don't care. And I don't think that matters. And people will lose their minds because how could you spend a top 5 pick on a guard? But it is what it is,
I think it's clear that you need him to play better against better competition. And I think this was my concern with the pick when it was made. It was probably going to be better than what they got at tackle in 2024. I thought it'd be an upgrade. The concern is that he might just be a guy who's never a top 10 player at his position. And at a position that important, if you're guaranteeing the guy's never going to be top 10, you might end up in a weird spot where you are constantly being good enough to put him in positions where it becomes painfully obvious he isn't good enough to win this game. Which I think you saw tonight, just not good enough. Now that can change. There's player development. He's a rookie. This is, there's plenty of time for this to change.
He's one of the youngest players in the league. He's not even 22 yet.
I think it's clear that the offensive line has to get stronger because losing the pass rush is one thing. While around the edge, the pocket was getting pushed from the interior, and they had issues passing off the twists and stunts because guys can't play at the same level. And then the best plays we saw to May today, outside of that one throw to Mac Hollins over the middle right before the touchdown pass, that was an unbelievable
great
throw.
throw.
It was when he was able to step up and run. And he just didn't really have that option for a lot of the game because the pocket was getting crushed. And you look back to the second half of that Bills game, and it's like, all right, yeah, there aren't a lot of options for a quarterback when the receivers are all covered and your running lanes have been collapsed. That's so you have to build a team around him that's good enough to allow him to have, it's not hard to build this team, relatively speaking, because May can succeed in so many different ways. He's so good with the deep passes that you just don't need to give him that many opportunities throwing the ball for him to be effective. You don't have to have the cleanest pass protection unit. You just have to give him enough chances. And
Right.
he's so good as a runner that even if the pocket breaks down, as long as you can keep a lane clear, you can still turn negatives into positives there.
Yeah.
It's like this offensive line does not need to be the fifth best line in football talent wise to win a Super Bowl, I don't think. But we thought that Jared Wilson was developmental and probably a center. So the development needs to happen. Position change, I think, needs to happen. We thought that Morgan Moses was a Band-Aid. He was a great Band-Aid. He was also, just a Band-Aid. If Morgan Moses is the worst player on your line, I think you're in great shape. Problem was he was your second best player.
Right.
And then, Will Campbell. I don't think people thought he was the most developmental just because he had played so well at such a young age that he should be able to make that jump immediately. But it's clear he's not where you need him to be the starting left tackle of a Super Bowl champion, at least a Super Bowl champion that's going to have to go through elite defenses to get there. So,
yeah, 100%. And the thing about Campbell too is that I don't think he was the same after the MCL injury. And I wonder if he was hurt. I wonder if how he was definitely banged up. The question is, how banged up was he? Right? Drake May was hurt. How banged up was Drake May? We just don't know. No one was 100% going to this game. Nobody, right? I mean, what you saw the report come out about Mac Hollins today. They lacerated spleen, right? And that's why he missed those 4 games. And it's just one of those things that you look at it and just say, all right, what do we have to do? Ray Spinning here, we need O-line, we need another pass rusher, and we need a stud wide receiver. So easy fixes. Luckily, stud wide receivers go on trees. Pass rushers are easy to find, and offensive line. We don't have an offensive line problem in the NFL right now, so it's easy. But it's not ideal. It's not ideal. And people are upset at me with Will Campbell, and I know that. And I don't care. Like, be upset with me if you want. I don't care. It really doesn't bother me. I can see a whole bunch of casuals talking about, Will Campbell, but again, you're not smart. You're not watching the game. You're not like breaking down the film and watching the game. You're not doing that. So like, it's not all about Will Campbell. And again, Will Campbell wasn't good. I'm not saying that Will Campbell was good. I'm not saying that what you got out of Will Campbell the last 3 or 4 games was good enough for me to say, oh, he's a top 10 tackle in the league or anything like that. But like, I saw enough from him this year that as a 21-year-old, I think he did pretty well. So like, I don't know. I just think that he has a lot of growth that he can do. His feet are great. For sure, they're great. And I'm not ready to give up on him yet.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, he just needs to be better next year. If this is the Will Campbell you get next year, and these issues come up again against top defenses, we might have to have a conversation.
Then you got no choice. You got to move him inside if that's the case. Yep.
Yeah. Or maybe not even until he gets just find a spot where he fits, or whatever.
Right. Right.
But yeah, I mean, he needs to be better. I thought he played a little bit better in the Denver game. The whole thing is just tough because like, what makes evaluating this Patriots season tougher going into the offseason is that you had guys battling injuries down the stretch, and it was also when you played the toughest teams, the toughest defenses by far, also often in worse conditions. You just have to parse all these different factors and figure out, how much is each thing playing into this. Like, is Drake May having a tough time reading the defense because his arm just like really hurts and he can't think? Like, is it that simple? It's possible. Yeah. Side note, Nick Gaiman-Worry looked fine today. Robert Spillane also looks fine today. So It's funny,
Yeah.
those were storylines and no issues there.
Not one.
Yeah. And it was, the path to victory for the Patriots was always going to be forcing multiple turnovers, having special teams probably end up being a net neutral because Seattle's so good there. And I thought, I'm going to go back to the beginning of the game real quick. The Patriots, we know this defense has struggled early in games. You hold Seattle to a field goal in the first drive after a couple improbable big plays where you almost force a couple turnovers. The next drive, you don't score, but you still pick up 20-something yards and you pin Seattle deep and you're able to run the football on it. After that, I was feeling pretty good. Because I was like, we're going to get the turnovers. Those are going to come. And if we're able to run the ball, that's going to be massive. Problem was the running just was not consistent. I think that was one play that stands out. You got a 9-yard run on 1st and 10. You don't move the chains on it because I think you run it again on 2nd and 1. I believe that was the Henderson run up the left side.
It goes nowhere.
When there was some room to the right
picked the
side.
wrong hole. Picked the wrong hole.
But here's the thing. It is designed for the hole he goes into. There should have been some space there. And the problem is that there was a window for a second and the lineman just could not keep it open. Garrett Bradbury gets no push. Byron Murphy totally stacks him up. Same thing. I don't remember who it was. I don't know if it was Wilson or Campbell to the left of him. It looks like there's a hole for a split second and it immediately collapses. Trevin Henderson just has not been that good at pushing piles. He's not, when he runs into traffic, it just kind of stops. He doesn't push forward through it. But it's 2nd and 1, and then the 3rd down play, I don't remember which one that was. It was one of the incompletions. And it's just like, man, to get a 9-yard run on 1st down in this game and to not even move the chains on it, that's just, you can't
happen. Can't happen.
And these, you saw that some of the pathways to victory in that first quarter, and they just couldn't keep any of that stuff up.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Let's do a quick ad break because we're only going to go for a few minutes here, but let's do a quick ad break and then we will go from there. The big game's almost here. Well, it is here. There's no better way to cash in during America's biggest sporting event than Prize Picks, where it always feels good to be right. And since the big game is right around the corner, that also means it's your last chance to get the football action before next season. So close the season outright with Prize Picks by getting $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. Don't forget, you can find a community on Prize Picks with the new social feeds feature. You can share Prize Picks with your friends and copy lineups from winners with a single click. Copy lineups you like or use them as inspiration for your own picks. You can even follow Prize Picks partners like us and tail or fade our picks with just one click. Don't forget that Prize Picks also has early payouts. If your play gets off to a hot start, you now have the option to cash out those winnings before the game even finishes. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. Okay. Yeah, I think the point that you made about the pathways to victory being there is a great one because they were there. The pathways were there, right? And the Patriots just couldn't capitalize on them. They couldn't force any turnovers. Darnold was trying to give him one. He was trying to give him one. He kept throwing into traffic. He kept throwing kind of across his body or across the middle into traffic, and they just couldn't capitalize and turn it into an interception. Gonzo almost had the pick at, in the end zone at the end of the first half. Just would have taken 3 points off the board, which would have been huge. But it's one of those things where I just look at it and think, man, like they really had a shot in the first half. That second half came out, and as soon as the Patriots went 3-and-out to start the second half, I was like, oh boy, this game's over. Like it just felt like, you needed to move the ball and we couldn't do it. And then to top that off, the Patriots punt and, they go 3-and-out. And the Seahawks go on a 10-play, 69-yard drive and kick a field goal to make it 12-0. And then at that point, you just kind of felt like, yeah, this is pretty much it, right? And then they traded punts a bunch of times, and then there's the strip sack, and then it leads to the touchdown. It's 19-0, and the game got away from them. And then in the fourth quarter, the Patriots scored 2 touchdowns. But by that point, it's too late. It's at that point, like the game's already over. Once it was 19-0, the game was over. If they had thrown that touchdown pass when it was 12-0 instead of 19-0, now you're dealing with a different story. Now you're feeling like, okay, 12-7, that's manageable. We can do that. And they never got to that point, unfortunately.
Yep. It's just, this is a game where you had to manage the game script. And, we did talk about in the preview, the way both of these teams played, this had real blowout potential either way. Because if one of the teams got up big and got the other quarterback rattled, the way their defense, their special teams can play, like it could get away. And it did. I think the Patriots were lucky it didn't get away earlier. I did think, even though it was 12-0, during that stretch of 3 and outs in the third quarter, it's like, Drake May is playing terribly right now, and it's still a 2-possession game. So at any point, if he finds this game and you're able to get a touchdown drive and make it 12-7, we're in business. Like, we're right back in this. It just didn't happen. It's that strip sack kind of with a dagger in, and then it's 19-0. And then you do get a little bit of momentum there later in the fourth before that real head scratcher of a pick that May throws. But even then, it was like you're down 2 scores in the middle of the fourth quarter. Like, you have a chance, but it's very limited against this defense to have this opportunity. And it also felt like the Patriots defense was just out there so much. I don't know how much they get actually run down by the running game versus like Kenneth Walker is just really good. But it felt like they were getting run down as the game went on. Yeah, Seattle 33 minutes time of possession. How many plays? Yeah, 71 plays run by Seattle in this one. Which kind of felt like by the end, it was just like, all right, it's so much tougher for the defense in that spot. And I don't know. Like, you needed more earlier in this game. And the fact that you got more yards on the first drive of the game than you did on the rest of the drives in the first half combined, that's where you lost it. You lose the field position advantage. Make life harder on your defense. You're forcing your defense to constantly go back out there. It's just not good enough. And it's literally, it's everyone involved. May was awful. We've gone down the line with this, but just there isn't anyone in that group who should feel happy with their performance today. And I think you can question the game plan a little bit. There's always so much you can do against this Seattle defense. Like, it's not, because here's the thing, like, one of the things you would do typically is like, all right, we're going to try to roll the quarterback out of the pocket. The way Seattle was blitzing, I thought made that really tough to do. And the way they played their zone coverage, I thought also made that really tough. Like, there just weren't opportunities. And I think we thought the biggest chances that May was going to have to create in this game were going to be out of structure, late in the down, using his legs as a runner. But the pressure was getting there so quick. Those opportunities weren't really there. And obviously he was not good as a thrower. They didn't make good decisions. There's more to it than that. But just like from a sample size perspective, if you're only getting like 3 or 4 chances to where the quality of your throw matters, like, because the other plays are also bad, like, you're just in a tough spot. Yeah,
it's tough, and that's unfortunately that's what it comes down to. And look, we kind of knew this, but it was gonna take a good effort from the Patriots today. It was gonna take them being, I don't want to say perfect because that's not the right way to phrase it. It was gonna take them being very good tonight in order for them to win. They did not play very good offensively. They didn't even play good offensively. And so when that happens, it is what it is. And again, we kind of went, it's not all the fault of Drake May. It's not all the fault of the offensive line, but you just kind of look at it and you say, man, like, I really felt like the Patriots with their MVP quarterback could play better than Sam Darnold. Darnold went 19 for 38 for 202 yards and a touchdown. And that's the difference in the game. May goes 27 for 43 for 295. He had 2 touchdowns, but he also had the 2 picks. Sacked 6 times. Darnold's only sacked once. So, like, again, were the sacks all Drake May's fault? No. But, like, one of the sacks, he was rolling out to his right, and he's trying to throw across his body, And it's like, just throw it away. You take a 10-yard loss because you're unwilling to just throw the ball away instead of take the sack, right? And it's, and sometimes it just becomes like, and that sack in particular, Will Campbell's blocking his guy, has his guy, and then Jared Wilson comes in from the side and hits him and just lodges Campbell from the block. And it's like, what are you doing, dude? Like,
you just
that's
then the other part of that whole thing, like the Wilson thing could make sense in that you're pushing the rusher deeper behind the line of scrimmage.
right.
But then it's the offensive line has to play as a team. That works if May has room to step up and avoid
Right.
that. The problem is he doesn't, because other guys are getting pushed back into his lap.
Right.
There's no, and this is true. We always said about Tom Brady, but it's true of any quarterback. If there's not room to step up in the pocket, the quarterback's going to struggle. That is football 101 right there. And I will say, like, that was, I think, one of the big differences here when the Seahawks got pressure. It often came from multiple. It was either one unblocked guy or multiple places at the same time. So there's nowhere for May to really go. When the Patriots got pressure, there were a couple of those. There was only one guy getting pressure, and Darnold was able to avoid it and make a play. And that's the difference. Like, it's a team sport. This is why the epitome of being a team sport. One guy, like Milton Williams, had 2 plays in there where he wins the rush and should get a sack. Darnold avoids them, and I think turned at least one of those to a positive.
Right.
Because the rest of the guys need to get there. And, I think talk about going into next year, need to be better on the line, both sides.
Yep. Yeah, and that's, I think, where it starts. I think that's where it starts. I think you have to invest in the offensive line. I think you got to invest in the defensive line. Again, I think we move Jared Wilson over to center. You probably keep Will Campbell at left tackle, and then we go out and try to get someone else. Now, whether that is in a trade, whether that's in the draft, whether that is free agency, like whatever it might be, you go out and you get someone, right? And you move Wilson over to center. Maybe you replace Morgan Moses at right tackle, depending on what you're thinking about. But it's a question of who's going to fit into that spot. So it's difficult and it's not easy. And this is what sucks about this year ending, is it was a fun year and there was a lot of guys that you liked rooting for, and a lot of great stories on the team.
Yeah.
And ultimately, what it comes down to is that the Patriots just weren't super talented. And I feel like we knew that. I mean, the win total for them was 7.5, right? Like, it's not like this team had these lofty expectations. They weren't supposed to be that good. And then they turned into this awesome team. And you're like, wow, okay, they went 14-3. Did they have an easy schedule? Sure. But they had basically the same schedule as the Bills. And they had a better record than the Bills, and they split with them. So, like, at a certain point, it's like, well, what do you want them to do? So anyways, it's just, it's my roundabout way of saying that it was a successful season. There's a lot of work to do. And I think, to your point, it has to start on the lines. You have to fix the offensive line. You got to kind of overhaul it again. And just kind of say, okay, if we like Jared Wilson at center and we like Will Campbell at left tackle and we like Mike Owen at right guard, now we got to fill 2 spots. And how do we fill those 2 spots? And
the name,
kind of go from there.
I hope listeners better get used to this name, because I'm going to be saying it all off season. David Edwards, guard from the Buffalo Bills. They don't have the money to keep him. He is like the same size as Will Campbell and plays guard. He's a mauler in the run game. He's a veteran. He's experienced.
Love it.
That's exactly what you need in that spot. I will say, if we play the hindsight game here real quick, that the Rashid Shaheed trade, I think if you had been told the Patriots will be good enough to go to the Super Bowl, you're probably willing to make that Rashid Shaheed trade. And the other one you probably make is the Joe Thuney trade.
Yes.
And I think if you were to make those two, that might not be enough to win this game, but it might be enough to at least change the game script up top and maybe, butterfly effect, change how things play out. But it's a good season. Happy with the season overall. The loss stinks. Is this what the 85 team felt like, where you
I don't
just
know
get
because
there, you're
I was
happy to be
one,
there, and
so
you
I
get
don't know.
shellacked. Yeah, no, that's just a not a question to you, a question to anyone.
Oh yeah,
I think people are going to look back on the Seahawks defense as one of the greats because that was special. I think the underrated, like, Christian Gonzalez had an unbelievable game tonight, and I do think it's a shame he's not going to get the recognition. I mean, he put the clamps on JSN. They had him travel with him, follow him, and he did it. That leaping pass breakup downfield on Shaheed was unbelievable. He should have had a pick right before the half. I can't believe he didn't pick that off. Which that's another one. It's like, all right, if Marcus Jones gets the pick and Christian Gonzalez gets that pick, maybe that changes the way this plays out.
well, and that's
Yeah.
that's definitely true, right? If Marcus Jones gets that pick six to start the game, right, and Christian Gonzalez picks that pass off at the end of the first half, you're talking about a completely different game. Unfortunately, neither of those things happened. I thought the defense played exceptionally well. Exceptionally well may not be the right word for it, but I think you're right. They played a B+ game, and the Seahawks played an AA- game, right? And it just kind of is what it is. And this is why I thought the game could be high scoring, because I knew that the defenses were very good, but that the offenses were both very good as well, right? The Patriots defense played well, but the Seahawks were still able to move the ball a little bit, right? They scored 19 points, right? So they had a decent game against the Patriots, right? They got into the scoring area 6 times. They kicked 5 field goals and scored a touchdown, right? So you kind of feel like, they moved the ball a little bit. Patriots played well, but they moved the ball a little bit. I kind of felt like the Patriots would be able to do the same thing. And of course they didn't, but I had felt like the Patriots could do the same thing. And unfortunately I was wrong, but what are you going to do? And I just think my big takeaway from this, and one of the reasons why I wrote the article that I wrote this morning on Pat's Pulpit, and if you haven't read it, you can, kind of, it's basically that the season was a success regardless of what happens in the Super Bowl. The reason why I wrote that this morning, or I guess yesterday morning, now that we've passed midnight, is that I didn't want people to lose sight of the fact that this team was the worst team in football last year. That for the last 5 years, we've been refreshing Tankathon. That, last year I had written my third 7-round mock draft, came out the Monday after the Super Bowl. Like, that's what we were doing for the last 5 years. And now we're in the Super Bowl, right? So it's like, that's pretty awesome. Now you lose, obviously, but you feel like what we saw from Drake May this year was pretty impressive. What we're seeing from some of our young defensive players and some of our young offensive players as well was pretty impressive. If we can go out and get some true playmakers on both sides of the ball, you feel like this team is headed in the right direction. I think we have the right coach at the helm. And I think, that this system is going to work. Again, this wasn't the game, and they got rocked, right, by the Seahawks. But I do genuinely believe that they are a team that can that this can be the beginning of a run for them. And not saying they're going to be some sort of dynasty or anything like that, but they'll be in contention for the playoffs and for the AFCs for the foreseeable future if they can continue to build off of what they've done this year. And I think that that's something that, after going 4-13 2 years in a row, that's not a bad thing.
I will say, I think we need to set expectations for next year. They're probably not going to win as many games. Probably not going back to the Super Bowl. We saw what happened in Washington, and I don't think that's going to happen here. But I think that is a cautionary tale that one good year does not a franchise make. And I think if I'll play the kind of devil's advocate to myself here for a second. I think if you're going to make an argument here where the Patriots should be concerned, it's that not only did Drake May struggle against the top defenses when he played them in the playoffs, on top of that, he struggled in poor weather, which is something he's going to have to deal with in Foxborough. Like, that's something that's going to continue to be a thing here.
Right.
And he seems to kind of be open about that. He talked about liking the weather better today. And obviously, like, he should, but like Tom Brady loved throwing in any weather, and you kind of have to have that attitude in New England. a lot of his success was him being dynamite on third down and him being an athlete who could create plays. And he is someone who took some injury risk with that this year and did last year as well. That's not dissimilar from that 1 year we got from Carson Wentz that he was never able to quite put back together again. I don't think Drake May is Carson Wentz, but I think if you were to kind of take the skeptical eye towards this Patriots team, it's that if he can't recreate the third down magic going forward, and as a runner, he continues to take some hits. And I think that's why, like you make the comparison. It's also worth remembering Eagles just won another Super Bowl last year. Like you could, and Seahawks just won one with Darnold. Eagles just won with Hurts last year. I think it's clear right now in this era in the NFL, you don't necessarily need a top 5 quarterback to win a Super Bowl if Drake May can't give you that every year. You need a good football team.
Right.
All positions. The Patriots are far away from that right now. Not super far away. They're good at a lot of positions. I'd say they're good at most positions. They're basically just not great at any. Right. So now the question is, how do you get to great? That's what you got to solve this offseason at as many positions as you can. And I think the additional note on that I'll add, like the reason that Seahawks pass rush is as good as it was in part is because they just kind of kept adding guys and they had a surplus of them. And I think you kind of have to have that attitude if you're New England. We might think there's enough. We have enough as any position. You probably don't. A lot of times the teams that win it all, one of the reasons they're able to do it is because they have a surplus of talent at one spot, and they're just able to kind of press that advantage on you for 60 consecutive minutes. Seattle did it with a depth of pass rush. We saw Eagles do it with a depth of pass rush last year. That's a great way to do it. There's other ways you can do it. But, this team needs some talent investment, which it's going to get. The draft happens.
Well, the draft happens, and the Patriots have a ton of capital to spend in the free agent market too. So, the hope is that they go out and they spend on both sides of the football. I think you're totally right about the pass rush, and the defensive line in particular. I think it's a very good thing that it seems like this draft class is a very good draft class for athletic linebackers. The Patriots could really use one of those guys. And so I like what we got from Christian Ellis, and I like what we got from Robert Spillane this year, but we could certainly use another guy, and a guy that can kind of erase maybe some tight ends, give you some, speed off the edge, and blitz up the middle as well and be a disruptor in that way. So there's a lot of places they can go with it, but that offensive line is going to have to be number one, on the list. And I think not far behind it is getting May a wide receiver that just flat out wins. That just, what? I'm going to give my guy the ball, because if they go one-on-one against him, it's over. And, sometimes it doesn't work. JSN had like 10 targets today, only 3 or 4 catches. But that opened up everyone else and made it easier for everyone else to be effective in the pass game. And sometimes that's what you need to be able to do. Even on days where your number one guy doesn't have that type of day, then it opens up other guys because they're so worried about stopping him that those other guys become available.
You want to cap this with a crazy stat?
Let's do it.
The Seahawks just became the first Super Bowl champion to go their entire postseason without a turnover.
How about that? Look at that.
They finished 31st in turnovers. They turned the ball over the second most of any team in the NFL this year. Got to the playoffs where they had to play, the 49ers, the Rams, the Patriots, 3 very good teams. Didn't turn the ball over once.
It's pretty unbelievable.
Incredible. And that's, it's a certain amount of luck and variance there, and it's also playing the best football at the right time. It's Sam Darnold. I wonder if we look back at the Sam Darnold run as almost Joe Flacco-esque. He just hits it for a couple games where he plays really well. I mean, he was lights out against the Rams and, good enough to win tonight. And, credit to him. Really good Seattle team. I'm curious where they end up stacking up when it's all said and done. I said this off air, but I'm confident enough in the take to say it on air. I think this defense might be better than the Legion of Boom when it's all said and done. It is something special, and I think Mike McDonald might be the Sean McVay of defense, which that playing out in the same division over the next however long is going to be one of the great narratives in the NFL, I think, here.
It's pretty wild. It's pretty wild. Also, these are my favorite types of comments. Hey, man, I hope we're frauds. That's okay. Listen, I'll take you want to call us frauds, that's okay. In the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
your team stinks.
Yeah, that's not.
Unless you were Seattle, which you're not, because your next comment is Seattle went to work, which means that's not your team. Okay. Yeah. So enjoy your team not being in the Super Bowl. That's all.
This is where I think the internet has ruined sports discourse, just because it makes, like, I don't know. If you ask people on the internet, every team that doesn't win a championship is a fraud.
Right.
It's like, if you want to have that mindset, you can. I won't. Patriots were a good team this year.
Right.
I would wager probably the Patriots were between the third and the fifth best team this season. The best two were probably Seattle and LA. And then, however you want to stack up the Patriots with healthy Denver, and if you want to throw Buffalo or Jacksonville in that conversation for that next group. But, like,
I also think the Patriots tonight played their 16th team of the season.
Yes.
We can talk about the schedule all we want. That's half of the league. That's half of the league. So, like, it's just kind of silly. You know what I mean? It's kind of silly. And apparently that was a Seahawks fan. So we were frauds, which means your team stinks. That's kind of funny.
It's also funny. It's also funny to come in here and do that when we've been nothing but complimentary to the
Seahawks.
No.
The Seahawks.
I'm not going to let that change my mind at all.
Matt, you didn't know this. The Seahawks weren't as good. Their Super Bowl victory actually isn't as good as you thought it was, because the Patriots were frauds. And so therefore, they didn't have to play anyone. Imagine going to the Super Bowl and getting a free win in the Super Bowl because the Patriots are frauds. Can you imagine? Like, if I were a Seahawks fan, I'd be talking about how great the Patriots season was. And Drake May was almost the MVP and this and that, and this was great. And that's how good our team was, that even though they had one of the best quarterbacks in the league, we shut them down anyways. Can you believe how good this team is? No. Instead, I'm going to talk about how bad the team we just beat was, because that somehow makes me look better. This is the internet logic that we have. So anyways, let's get the hell out of here. I got to write my article. And
we're on to the 2026 season.
We're on to the draft. I think maybe we'll have a mock draft coming out next week. I haven't even looked at any of them. I just, what are you going to do? So it's been fun not being there. I can almost promise you that Jennings Dunker will be in my first mock draft. We'll see, but that would be my guess. We'll see what happens. But anyways, thanks for tuning in, everyone. Thanks for keeping the comment section flowing this year. Thanks for riding along with us. We appreciate it. It's been a fun year. And, unfortunately it ends with a loss, just like it did for 31 other teams. And hopefully, next year will be better. I mean, listen, if we can hope for anything close to this next year, what a wild ride this has been. And hopefully that continues. So anyways, thanks for tuning in. Be good to each other and go Pats.